Good evening. Welcome to this month's Town Administrator Report. I'm David Watts Jr., and with me is our Town Administrator, Steve Maio. How are you, Steve?
I'm great, David. How are you?
Good. You just came from an event in town.
Yeah, the White Ribbon Pledge, Wakefield Alliance Against Violence has been, putting this together, for, 15 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And it really is a very moving and important event where, everybody in attendance, particularly men, take the pledge to make sure that they will stand up against any form of gender-based violence.
Mm-hmm.
And that group does a great job, and I love how they, in the very brief ceremony they have, bring in the high school kids who do some great singing, and it really is a moving, touching day, so I was very pleased to be a part of it.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And also, Town Councilor Bob Vincent is with us, and we'll be getting to him in a few minutes. But before that, we wanted to talk about a recent event here in town when Helga Melmud, a 97-year-old Holocaust survivor, was brought in by Rabbi Shuli Brook at Shabbat of Wakefield, and to talk about her experiences in the Holocaust. And in this particular part, she came to the Savings Bank Theater here at the high school to talk to a group of high school kids.
I really think that we have to call her the amazing Helga Melmed, because to have gone through the experience that she did, and at 97 years old, to be as sharp and just as articulate as she was what a moving show. And for those of us that have had or have teenage kids,
right?
There wasn't one teenage kid looking on their phone while this was going on, chatting. They were spellbound.
They were
on
absolutely.
Every word. Yeah, we were both there, so we saw it.
Yes, and we do have some photos of the event. Hopefully they can pull them up. There we go. And this was just amazing. Absolutely amazing. There wasn't a sound in the hall.
Not at all.
For
Not at all.
Nearly an hour.
Yeah, that's her daughter behind her who sometimes had to, I think, repeat what had been said because she's a little hard of hearing.
Yeah.
But other than that, no, Helga really spoke without notes, minimal notes, only used them when she showed some pictures that were up on the screen, but really amazing.
Yeah. In addition to the high school kids, the assistant superintendent was present.
Yep.
And the principal of the high school was also present, along with the town administrator.
Yeah, some old guy in the background there.
Some old guy there over in the corner all by himself. But and what helped also were the illustrations she had up on the screen that she brought with her, so that the audience could get some visual semblance of where she was talking about. And then you also made a presentation afterward.
Yeah, such a wonderful, wonderful woman. And the stories that she told, and particularly one was very poignant and I think was very important for the kids to hear. Not only to hear about, this horrible, portion of our history.
Right.
Which is so important that, and we're going to talk about history a little bit later on.
Yes.
When we talk about the Soldiers and Sailors Monument in town. But how important it is for kids to hear history, lest it be repeated.
Yes.
It's so important for them to hear it. But she told a story about how they had been moved into a work camp and prior to Auschwitz, and her father had been killed because they had all the men run around, and they were used for target practice. And that's how her father was killed.
Yes.
And so she was with her mother in the work camp, and it happened to be her birthday. And what they had been surviving on were coffee grounds and potato peels, which they made into patties and somehow grilled them and ate them. And all she wanted for her birthday was an onion. And had asked her mother, I'd love an onion. And her mother somehow miraculously came up with an onion that she said it wasn't that good of an onion, but it was the best gift she ever had. And I think about, society today, and I include myself in this. You know what? We want the latest iPhone. We
Yep.
want the latest fashion. We want the latest pullover, whatever it is. We want the best seat at the concert that we can get. And this woman was so thrilled to have an onion for her birthday, and how and the kids were just eyes like saucers, just looking at it.
Well, and she
Very,
also
very cool.
lost her mother to
Yeah.
illness.
Yeah, a little bit later.
And by the end of World War II, when she was finally free, she and 3 other young girls, teenage girls, were sent to Sweden.
Yeah,
to
which
get
I
better.
actually didn't know that. And she said when she came out of that camp, she weighed 65 pounds.
46.
46, was that what it was?
46 pounds.
And was sent to Sweden to rehab, and then made her way to the United States. But what was really interesting to me was that the fact that there were 4 young girls, and they called themselves Camp Sisters. And so I asked her during the question and answering period, did she stay in touch with the Camp Sisters? And she said yes. She went to New York City. One went to upstate New York. I think one went to Philadelphia. So 3 of them were the U.S. and did occasionally get together. One stayed in Sweden and remained there. But she had just received a phone call from either probably the grandson or the son of her camp sister from Sweden. And she was meeting him. 97-year-old woman was flying, I think she said Hamburg, Germany, to meet with her, the child of her camp sister.
Yep.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And at the end, the kids, our students being what they are today and living in this, posting world, were lining up to take pictures with her, selfies and what have you. It really was quite moving, and her message was great. It was a great program. I thank the high school for putting it on. And I thank Rabbi Brooks, who is he does the menorah lighting with the Shabbat downtown, and he did a great job getting her here.
He really did, and that night she did it all again to a literally sold-out audience at Reading High School in their auditorium. Not one seat was empty. Yeah. Not one seat was empty. And to have done it twice in one day was just amazing. Yeah, it was really amazing.
Fabulous event. I was quite happy to be there.
And there's the rabbi is there, as well as school administration. Yeah. And it was just a great day. So, but it is a story that really, everybody needs to know. Everyone needs to understand it, lest it happen again. Yeah. So, and then moving on again, looking at past wars, the Soldiers and Sailors Memorial. Bob, you're involved in that.
Yes, thank you, Dave, for having me here today, and Steve, sharing your town administrator report time with me. When I first got elected, I volunteered on July 4th down with the West Side Social Club when the children come around with their carriages and whatnot. And I helped escort the winners to a platform, first, second, and third place, and they got their ribbons. And it was right next to the memorial. And I've jogged by it and walked by it, but I hadn't been that close to it. And I saw the condition it was in. And then a few months later in October, the town council decided to allocate $10,000 in ARPA money to get a repair estimate. That came in about $300,000. Public Works presented it to the Capital Planning Committee. They recommended approval, and then in the spring of '23, the town unanimously voted at town meeting to restore the memorial. And since we're not a Preservation Act community, we have to come up with interesting ways to preserve our historic structures. And being a military person and being stationed around the world, history is very important to me. And I was very impressed with how Wakefield wanted to go and restore that memorial. So, as you know, that memorial was dedicated to us in 1902 by Harriet Newell Flint. She funded the entire project.
In her will.
In her will. She
Yeah.
died in 1896.
Yep.
And then it was,
It's too bad we couldn't get it for the same price.
I think it was $11,000 with the interest.
Yeah.
But one of the things that the chair of the Board of Selectmen said at the dedication ceremony that day,
Yep.
when he accepted the monument, was he vowed in the name and on behalf of the citizens of Wakefield, we promise that it will ever be well and tenderly guarded. And what's impressive now is that we are fulfilling that promise. The town of Wakefield, over the last couple of years, culminating with the ceremony that we're going to have on May 31st, is fulfilling the promise that was made 123 years ago, that we would take care of that, town treasure. So, Steve and many folks, town officials, and then other volunteers and I have been working over the last few months to put together a rededication ceremony. Tying in what the presentation that you all just talked about with the involvement with school children.
Yep.
Steve and I wanted to make sure that the residents of the town really participated in this rededication ceremony. So it's very youth-centric. We are going to have singers from the school. The AP history class, their project is they are synopsizing the 20 battles that are listed on the memorial in pairs of 2. And then we're going to have them with the reenactors out on the common before we do the actual rededication ceremony, where they can share what they learned with residents in town. Where Commander Shelby Nickerton is going to come up here from Newport. She's going to do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Shelby was a Navy destroyer commander in the
USS
Red
Thomas
Sea.
Hudner.
Yep.
Now she's stationed in Newport, Rhode Island.
Yep.
And she's going to come up here and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and we're going to arrange to have hopefully elementary school children from each of the elementary schools in town to be up there with her. One of the things I've been telling folks in town is, since it was dedicated in 1902, 2102 is the bicentennial, which is 77 years from when we dedicate it now. And one of the things that we're going to do is we're having a time capsule. The Boys and Girl Scouts are actually putting that together. And I've told folks who have young children, if you come to the event with your children in May, May, and they're with their parents and grandparents, they will remember 77 years from now when they go with their children and grandchildren, how they were here and they participated in the ceremony. And some of the interesting things that we're going to put in the time capsule is we actually have a coin from 1865, which this year is the 160th anniversary of the end of the Civil War.
Right.
We also have a coin from 1902, at the year that it was dedicated, and then we're going to put coins from 2025, along with letters from the town council, school committee, other kind of mementos we're going to put in there, so that the folks. It was actually interesting writing the letter with Steve to the residents in the year 2102 on behalf of the town council. You're writing to the future.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
But I have been very impressed with how enthused folks in town are on having, a reenactment and a rededication ceremony. We have quite a few reenactors coming. We have the Sons of the Union Veterans of the Civil War, and Kevin Tucker is actually a local resident, and he's very involved with them. And he's gotten the Providence Brigade Band. He's got the New England Brigade of Reenactors. The 54th Massachusetts Light Artillery is coming. Civilian reenactors called Be What Remains. These are women and reenactors, and I've asked them at the ceremony to actually do the biography of Harriet Newell Flint while they're dressed in their Civil War clothing. So we still have a lot of work. Every time we meet twice a month now, and we realize just how much more work there is. But the number of town officials that are involved with a lot of the logistical work, and WCAT as well, in terms of putting this together. Do you have some
I was
things
going
to
to say that it's not going to be, just a day of speeches. The ceremony itself is relatively short.
Right.
Like Bob said, there's going to be a lot of music, and the reenactors will be sprinkled around the Veterans Memorial Common, or Upper Common, as some people know it, and the Lower Common. And we plan that they'll have some sort of demonstrations of what a Civil War camp was.
Mhm.
You know, are they making, I don't know, are people making candles or bullets or whatever they're doing? It'd be very interesting, and it's really is you know, a day, kind of an afternoon of events. There's going to be an event in conjunction with the Human Rights Commission regarding, I'm not going to say slavery in Wakefield, but related to, you know, slavery and maybe the Underground
The Underground,
Railroad and things
Right.
like that in Wakefield. So really is going to be a day of, you know, from noon until 4
Mhm.
of really interesting historic events. And, you know, just like it was important for us to all see Ms. Melmont's wonderful presentation. I think it's very important for our kids and our grandkids and our citizens to know that, you know, there were, you know, many Wakefieldians.
Right.
Their names are in the town hall,
Right.
who left Wakefield, you know, to fight to keep a union together,
Right.
and went places they had definitely, I would say, never been before.
Right.
They had never been probably south of Boston, many of them, at that time. So for them to go and to fight in those battles, and I think the battles are interesting because you'll know a few of them because you're a history buff, right? But I admit that, and I think Bob even admitted it. There
Yes.
were some battles we didn't know that are on there, and it's kind of fun looking them up and where they were, and we know a lot of them, right?
Right.
But the First Baptist Church has been very gracious in also having some student art or some student items in their newly created facility there.
Mhm.
So that's going to be part of it. So it's going to be a really good day. And during the restoration, and I think you might have some pictures of that. How many people? Because my office is right there, and I can look out the common there and look at it.
There's the removal of one of
Right.
the statues.
First of all, this was very nerve-wracking to see. But, you know, Daedalus wasn't nervous, so why should I be? They know what they're doing. And, you know, they do this all over the country and perhaps
Yep.
all over the world.
Yep.
I think they were going, the next project was in Washington, D.C.
Mhm.
from here. The amount of people that stop by to watch this
Mhm.
process going on, and now that it's done and it's gleaming and scrubbed and so nice, the people that came out and really are enjoying looking at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and I include myself in that.
Yeah.
It really is. I've told Bob it's one of the better things we've done as a community. For me, as I'm on the back nine, it's really kind of nice for me that this is kind of one of the last things I'll be doing publicly will be this dedication ceremony.
Well, and the several of the statues had become so damaged over the
Yeah.
years, you know.
And we were on the verge of losing some of them permanently if we hadn't
Right.
gotten it repaired recently.
Right. Right. People don't realize that granite does over time degrade.
And I think some had been vandalized too over the years.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
One of them lost an arm.
Yeah.
Yes. And so this is
Yeah, this is
this
the
was
picture that
during the
these
restoration.
made me nervous. Like they're sending pictures of what they're doing. Oh, what have we done?
Art restoration is an interesting discipline within itself, you know, but ultimately you can see
Yeah,
what it
and
looked
there
like
is.
when they got it
Unbelievable.
and now what it looked like before it was reinstalled.
Yeah,
So back to its original.
Yeah, I mean, look at
Form.
that difference.
yes, yeah.
Yeah,
really
no,
fabulous.
absolutely. Absolutely.
And as I recall, Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, is that these statues are just on a base. They're
That's right.
not they're not glued, they're
No.
not pegged in or
They're just
anything.
on a
No, no,
They're
no.
and they've lasted, you know, they haven't been blown over for it's amazing to me that has worked.
Yeah,
And they literally have weathered 123 New England seasons.
absolutely.
Another thing to bear in mind about this, remember we were, as you know, we were South Reading during the Civil
Yes.
War. The sculptor of that memorial also sculpted the bronze doors of the U.S. Capitol. And the builder of the memorial erected 87 granite monuments at the Gettysburg battlefield and numerous other monuments at other Civil War battlefields.
Right. It was interesting because they actually used two existing statues as models for two of the figures
I
that
didn't
are
know.
at Gettysburg.
And then Nancy Bertrand has written a biography of every single one of Wakefield residents who died
Yeah,
fighting in the Civil War.
yeah,
Also, there's a book that was written a few years ago about Wakefield and the Civil War, and while I could not place a Wakefield soldier in Galveston, Texas on June 19th, 1865, I could place one there within 10 days of that.
yeah,
That got down there just shortly after that, very early July.
yeah,
The other interesting thing, tying in with what Steve said before, the Sons of the Union Veterans of the Civil War actually do a very formal rededication ceremony where we will turn the statue over to them.
yeah,
And with Steve's retirement and whatnot, I asked him to be the person to represent the town,
mm-hmm,
to turn it over to the Sons of the Union Veterans, who then do a very somber 20-minute ceremony,
mm-hmm,
and then they turn it back over, and then he'll accept it back on behalf of the town. As Steve said before, this is not going to be a politician-centric event. The way that we've scripted
nor
this,
really should it be.
nor should it
Nor
be.
should it be,
We want a lot of students involved.
Yep,
We want a lot of appreciation for Wakefield's history
yep,
and a significant turning point in American history.
mm-hmm,
The other thing I'll note, if you look at 1902 and you look forward 123 years to 2025, if you look back from 1902, 123 years,
mm-hmm,
you're still fighting the Revolutionary War.
mm-hmm,
So that monument actually sits at the halfway point between the American Revolution and present day,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Which I found very interesting when I was tracing the history behind this.
Well, but also, this year is a banner year for history buffs in a lot of ways. It's the 250th anniversary of Lexington and Concord.
Absolutely.
It is the 80th anniversary of the German surrender in World War II, and then in September, the Japanese surrender. And, so there are those as well. So, big year for history buffs.
And we won't get into whether the first shot was at Lexington. The real first shot was Lexington and Concord.
No.
Because there seems to be
We'll
some
leave that for another
discrepancy
show.
over that.
We'll leave that for another show. But it is, this coming on top of all the other pieces of history rededications this year is pretty awesome.
We've invited the governor,
Yeah,
who attended in 1902, not Maura Healey.
Yeah,
But
we know.
invited the governor, and I think we're still waiting to hear back from her.
Yeah.
And Congressman Moulton's staff has
Yeah,
indicated.
I spoke, we invited Congressman Moulton, spoke with his staff,
Mm-hmm.
and it is at the top of his list for that day. Now,
Mhm.
things happen in government, and he may be stuck in Washington or something will
Right.
happen, but he is, military is very important to him.
He's
you
a
know, being
veteran. Yep.
and
Yep.
he really would enjoy this event, so we're hopeful. We're
Mhm.
hopeful that either that he will come, we're hopeful that the governor or the lieutenant governor will come. I will say that we will not be wearing, or I will not be wearing, a wool period suit from 1902 with a vest, because I'm afraid that, and a top hat, I'm afraid it might get too hot. Bob may, I tease, we have a lot of help in the office from people like Ann Wade in DPW, Jen McDonald,
Yes.
our communications director, and I'm asking them, are they going to wear long dresses with long sleeves and hats and parasols? And I don't think they're planning to do that either. But when you look at the dedication in 1902,
Right.
that picture is fascinating. How many townspeople not only showed up, but how they were dressed for that event. It
Well,
really is
everyone dressed for events in
very
those
different
days.
back in that
Yeah.
day.
Everyone dressed for events.
Yep.
Because next year, we're looking at the 100th of the dedication of the hiker statue
Exactly.
in
Yes.
October
Yes.
of next year. So-
October of 26.
So
I
it'll,
I do want to give a shout out to town staff because this started to really grow,
mm-hmm,
and I'm not at all the most computer literate person, so I started like writing notes and going, man, this is becoming a bit much for me. And then Jen McDonald has put together like spreadsheets and came
Mhm.
up with the idea of having bi-monthly. We meet
Bi-weekly,
twice a month,
yeah. Bi-weekly.
bi-weekly meetings, and we do it in the conference room, and some people are on Zoom. And having that organization, and then Ann Waite coming in with, well, don't forget, all the infrastructure stuff that I was like not even paying any attention to. So I'm very appreciative of town staff. I'm not surprised; they're extremely good. But town staff, and they're excited about this too.
Right.
This doesn't happen that often.
Right.
No, not at all.
And the only drawback, with this is that when Jen McDonald puts together her spreadsheet for us
Yep.
on, and we have tasks
Yep.
that we have to do, and they're coming up, and it's on there for everybody to see whether we completed or not our tasks. So I'm always looking at it saying, am I behind? I got another week.
Now, one of the things that we are, and this is part of this today, we're really starting to do a lot more advertising. The Item's going to do an article for us soon. Aaron Kakinda is going to be approaching stores in town. We have save the date things that we can, placards that we can put in stores. So we're going to start putting that all over town. And then the school has been very good. The schools have been very good about advertising to parents and children that this is happening.
Sure.
And I also want to Steve Engels, who's the chair of the school committee, but he's also very involved with Scouts. He's the one that came up with the idea about a time capsule about a year ago, and I was delighted with that idea. I think that's fantastic. He and Ann Waite have been working on. I mean, Ann's actually explored different types of time capsules and those that, and has talked to Daedalus, the company to get advice on where to bury it. We obviously don't want folks to know where it's buried, except they need to know in 2102 when they open it up. But just things like that, leaving a mark in present day for future generations. And like I said before, the fact that a child who's 10 years old and attends the event in May goes in 2102 when he or she is 87 with their children and grandchildren. And that's how you pay, that's how you pass history along.
That's right.
Being there, participating in it. And I think about somebody who's going to be in their late 80s or early 90s in 2102. Say, I remember when I was a child and I did the Pledge of Allegiance, or I helped put together the time capsule.
Sure.
I was a singer at the event. And that's a great way of preserving that history for future generations.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I hope that we get a good turnout that day, to see the work that's been done and to appreciate the history behind it.
Yeah, I think we will. I hope we will. I'm hoping personally to have my 4 grandchildren there. One will be a newborn and certainly won't remember, but and I'll have a 1-year-old there, 1.5, a 10-year-old, and a 6-year-old, so that they may remember a little bit. But certainly, with today's day, there could be some pictures so they can put themselves at the event.
Right. And I'll have a 13-year-old and a 9-year-old there. So
it'll be really good.
So he mentioned that to me a few weeks ago, that his grandchildren were going to be there. So I went home. I was in his office. I went home and I called my 2 children. Neither one who has children right now, although one lives in Minneapolis and one lives in Washington, D.C. area. And I said, all right, here's something you have to commit to. Somebody, one of our relatives, I don't care where they're living in 2102, needs to go to Wakefield, Massachusetts and go to the bicentennial, because I need to have somebody present from my side in 2102. And they promised me that if they have children, they will make sure that gets passed down to generations, so somebody will be there.
Yeah. No, that just is fantastic.
And again, thinking about how I'll share with what is attributed to be the ancient Roman philosopher Cicero, to be ignorant of what occurred before you were born is to remain always a child. For what is the worth of human life unless it's woven into the life of our ancestors by the records of history? And this is certainly part of that. So
And that's why
that's going to be in my letter.
It's so important, whether it's Helga Melmoth's story, or the story behind this monument and the Civil War and what that meant, because I'm afraid that's getting forgotten today. Shelby Foote said once, the writer of the 3-volume set of Civil War history, that the Revolutionary War broke us away from England, but it was the Civil War that ultimately made us what we became. If that had not happened, we would have been a very different country.
He was in those Ken Burns.
He
Ken
was.
Burns show. He was.
He
in
was,
the guy
but
with the beard.
His 3-volume Civil War narrative is an unbelievably readable book on the history of the Civil War. It's really well done.
It's interesting to live here, where I've been the last 10 years, where there's so much Revolutionary War history.
Mm-hmm.
But having grown up in Maryland and
Mm-hmm.
having been stationed in Virginia,
Mm-hmm.
Going on a Saturday when I was a child to Bull Run was
Mhm.
something we did, or Antietam,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
and going to Gettysburg.
Mm-hmm.
So living in the Mid-Atlantic states,
Mm-hmm.
a lot more of Civil War, battlefields to go to, and then coming up here, it's a lot more of the Revolutionary War. So it's
Mhm.
interesting to have lived in both places.
Yeah, because the
Right.
Civil War never made it this far up. But my maternal grandparents, who both grew up in Connecticut, my grandfather worked for GE, and they were transferred to Atlanta in 1922, the year after they were married. And at that time, you could still see the scars of the Civil War, the burning of Atlanta and Sherman's march to the sea. That late.
Wow.
And it wasn't until after the Second World War that all the development happened that erased all of that history in that area. But that level of destruction could still be seen here and there throughout the countryside.
And when you look at some of the battles that are depicted on the Soldiers and Sailors Memorial, the ones that aren't as well known,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of them were during Sherman's March. When you look at where they were located in Tennessee and Georgia and South Carolina, and a lot of them were during Sherman's March.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Bob, thank you very much.
I know. Thank you for your efforts on this. Bob.
Well,
Really.
thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely.
Thanks for having me in.
We really appreciate, both with the Human Rights Commission as one of the inaugural members,
Oh.
and with this project now. So, very, very deep thanks. Next month, we'll talk about
This is much more fun than the budget talk is going to be. Town meeting talk. but
town
that's
meeting
fine.
is coming up. Next month will be town meeting. We're going to do what we've in the past done in 3 shows in 1.
Right.
But we will get to that next month. Bob, thank you. Steve,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
thank you for joining us. We'll see you next month.